We say things like, maybe later, perhaps another time, or I'll see you tomorrow. But for some of us, there won't be a tomorrow. Listen as your worst nightmares come to life. These nightmares have become someone's reality. My name is Justin Crowley, and this is The Murder Project. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of The Murder Project. In this episode, we're going to be doing the debrief on the Suitcase Killer, Rosendo Rodriguez. This should be a very interesting case because there's a lot of different things to talk about in way of evidence and different theories we might have. So we are very interested in jumping in there and getting to it. First, if you're new to the podcast, the debrief episodes is where I sit down with my good friend and former police officer Mike Smith to discuss the case further. In the debrief, we discuss the cases from both sides of the aisle, theories that we might have, and anything we think needs a second look. The debrief is an unscripted and off-the-cuff commentary about the cases that we are currently covering. The hope of the debrief is to break the case down further in a relaxed environment, but with the true crime we love and also some laughter. So let's get the episode started. Mic check, a 1 2 1 2.
Checkity check. We're ready to go.
Right on. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, my friend. This is an interesting case and a more local one, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. The way that this case kind of came about was we had a listener from the Lubbock area. The name was Hair091. They said that they love the podcast, looking forward to it every week, that we keep them interested the whole time, that they are listening and make them laugh. They say that they're from the Lubbock area, and so it's interesting to hear us talk about different places in Lubbock and Amarillo and surrounding areas. And then they mentioned this podcast, or this person, Rosendo Rodriguez specifically, and said, would we do that? And when I looked into it, I thought, holy cow, I remember this when all this was going on. And I was living in Big Spring at the time that all this was happening, but I definitely remember it. And so that was actually a person that gave us a review on Apple.
That's right, Hair091. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So anybody else out there, we're going to try to read some more as they're coming along. But
guys, we're listening.
We're listening.
We want the feedback. We want to know what's up, and especially local cases. Not just local, but Texas altogether is perfect for us because that is our formal training in the world of law enforcement. So it's something we're the most knowledgeable about.
Yep. And then next couple episodes, we'll have another one that a lady told us about that lives up in Michigan. And we'll give you all the details on that one when it happens. But we just want to let y'all know we're listening. So we'll jump into this one. It's definitely a case that it's unsettling, I think, for the most part. When you look at the way that these women were, well, for sure Summer, but also that we're pretty sure that Joanna met the same fate, and just the way that they died, and then what was done with them afterwards. So
yeah, this guy was clearly a very callous monster who disposed of them exactly in the way in which they were found, like trash. And I'd only heard about the case. The name barely rung a bell, but it's only because I remember hearing about him being executed by the state of Texas. So yeah, when I started looking into it, I was like, oh yeah, I do know just a tad about this. So I did learn quite a bit, and jumped on the internet machine to educate myself as much as possible, as well as listening to, the first episode.
Yeah. And I want to go ahead and mention, yes, I know I said asphyxiated instead of asphyxiated. I was in a hurry. My mind is like, when I'm sitting there doing the episode by myself, like my mind is like whirling while I'm trying to figure out how I want to go through all this and what details I want to talk about and what not talk about, because we're going to do this. And then I also know that at one point, instead of saying UCP, I said UPC or it's UPC code.
That's right.
And I said UCP. Now I'm confusing myself.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever.
I mean, he also called them rubber gloves and not latex glove, but who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting all the mistakes, right?
Yeah. No, man, what? I mean, easy.
Anyways,
easy.
I tried to go back and figure out a way to edit myself out of that without having to re-record stuff, and I couldn't because it just, everything ties in together. And so, truth be told, we're doing this podcast at my kitchen table, so I let it slide.
You know what? And I think we have a really forgiving fan base, and they're going to go ahead and let that slide as well.
I hope so.
Yeah, thank y'all for that ahead of time.
You. All right, so Rosendo Rodriguez comes into Lubbock, and well, you know what? Actually, let's back that up.
Why is he in Lubbock?
So,
wait, from what I've gathered, he was a Marine reservist who was doing some type of training here, whether that's administrative training, classification training for his actual job,
right?
As a Marine reservist. I actually couldn't find the answer on that. It just only ever says a Marine reservist training in Lubbock.
Yeah, he was a Marine reservist, and he was doing training, and that's pretty much where that trails off. There's nothing else there. But he comes into Lubbock, and he's down for training. And what I think is the most interesting thing is that what are the odds that this city worker, I'm sure, is at the landfill standing by where this trash truck is offloading its contents.
Yeah.
And notices the suitcase dump out of the back because they're compacting all of this trash as they're going. He sees the suitcase come out, and as he's looking at it, he's like, wow, that thing looks like it is packed full of something.
Right. So here's how I envision it. And if a landfill guy ever listens, let us know.
Yeah, reach out.
But I'm thinking he's watching. He just happens to be in the area. I imagine between all the power equipment that moves this stuff around, there's like a central area where they dump. And that thing probably came out of the back of the truck like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
So boom, and he's thinking, "Wow, that's
tumbling out of the back,
like an audible impact." He takes a second look because it hit the ground so hard it probably stood out among the refuse, and then he goes, "Wow, that thing must be really full." Maybe he takes a closer look. Also, that suitcase looks pretty new.
Mm-hmm. Even with all of the what I would describe as trash juice on this thing, he's still able to see like this is very odd. So he walks over to the suitcase, unzips it, and thinks that there's a mannequin inside of this suitcase.
It's remarkable how often people want it to be a mannequin because
your brain's probably telling you that it's a dead body and then tricking you into trying to make you believe that it's a mannequin.
Because you're like, no way, I'm just finding a dead body in this suitcase on some random Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Wrong. It was, in fact.
It's a dead body. So he looks, sees the red hair, is kind of looking in the suitcase, and he's like, the realization hits him, oh my gosh, it's a dead woman in a fetal position in the suitcase.
I mean, tucked
in. Yeah.
I mean, that's, what were her dimensions?
I'm not sure. And I saw, because I was kind of talking about some of this in the show before this, but I saw a picture of the suitcase.
Yeah.
And it was not, that's why I tried to say, it's not like a oversized, huge suitcase that you would see. It's not a duffel bag. It literally looks like a larger suitcase that you might see someone rolling through an airport. And she is just tucked and bent into this suitcase and then zipped up. And then he just chunks it into a dumpster. So I think as a society, we got really lucky with this guy at the landfill finding this suitcase.
He did.
Because it kind of sets in motion everything that we're about to talk about.
It absolutely did. Yeah, it was very fortunate because he was able to put an end to this guy who was clearly disturbed.
Oh, yeah, maniac.
And had some real problems where he loved to abuse women.
Yeah. And I also want to commend the Lubbock Police Department because they jumped on this thing and rolled with it. And that's what I'm saying. They found Summer's body, and 2 days later, they were in San Antonio talking to Rodriguez.
Yeah, and that is something that is remarkable because this detective or these detectives were on it. As a police investigator or an investigator of any kind, the fact that the suitcase was so new, that's something you're not going to forget. You're like, man, this thing looks brand new. There's no mileage on it. There's no scuffs. There's no old remnants of stickers from like travel and things like that. And she did have the tattoo of her name on her. So, I mean, it was a lot of things that really got it elevated to like a good starting point.
Yeah, and so he looks into the suitcase and sees that it still has the UPC code inside of it. Takes that code, looks it up on the internet, and finds this thing is only sold at Walmart. Mm-hmm. So that's a lucky break. It's not at 15 different department stores. It's just at Walmart.
That's right.
He's able to go to the Walmart, and Walmart has a very sophisticated tracking system, which also works out. I mean, a lot of things. That's what I say. It's a lot of what I would classify just miracle after miracle, like just things that are happening that the guy or girl at Walmart's like, yeah, man, not only can I tell you when this or what location the suitcase was bought at, I give you the time and everything.
Right, yeah. It's a lot of data being collected for a purchase that's nondescript.
Yeah. And they track this back to a Walmart. He shows up there. They've got CCTV footage of Rodriguez coming into the Walmart, just casually strolling through there. Maybe that's not anything suspicious. He looks like the average guy just walking through Walmart. It is a little strange that it's 3:30 in the morning and he's buying luggage. But then they notice, he also bought a box of latex gloves.
Yeah.
Now, that has to be the moment where they're like, we're on the right track.
I think anybody, even to this day, that I see purchasing things like latex gloves, I'm automatically like, suspect.
Shovel, tarp.
Oh, geez,
rope.
Yeah.
You're like
the body disposal kit. Yeah. I mean, even the person checking them out, if they actually checked out at a person and not just a self-check kiosk, has to be like, this is suspicious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he goes so he buys the latex gloves and the suitcase. And this is where I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on this because I don't know, in my mind, two things, just something's not adding up right. So Rodriguez checks out. It's 3:30 in the morning. 16 minutes later, he's getting fuel at a gas station. And then after that, he goes to his hotel. And actually, I want to save that part for later. But he gets Summer's body into the suitcase and disposes of it. Mm-hmm. A few hours later, he's on a Greyhound back to San Antonio. And in his mind, he's thinking no one's the wiser.
Right.
And I think also... I don't want to say this too many times, but another shout out to Lubbock PD, because I would almost assume that Rodriguez was thinking in his head that no one might care about this girl because of what her profession was.
Right. Yeah. He
obviously thought they weren't going to find her.
Right. Yeah. He probably thought it's a landfill. Who's out there just watching the trash come out the back of a truck? Well, too bad for you, buddy.
Yeah.
That was the day a guy was like, huh.
Yeah.
That's a spiffy suitcase.
Yeah.
Maybe he was
out.
interested in the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle.
Exactly.
Nothing that a little bit of soap and water's not going to clean up.
Spray that thing off and it's good to go.
I mean, you spend enough time in scrap yards and junk yards, you're going to find those little nuggets and little treasures that somebody tossed out because they didn't want. And nothing a little elbow grease ain't going to clean up. You're going to take that sucker home. And I personally there's no problem with that.
No.
People throw out all sorts of things. So it's just unique for the case, especially that this happened. But I'm sure his intent was, I'm not going to get caught. It's going in the trash. It's going to get dumped in a landfill. It's going to get picked up by a front end loader, dumped into a huge ditch buried with dirt, and that's going to be the end of it.
Yeah. No one's ever going to see that again. And we don't know this at the time, but it's already worked once before.
That's right.
So he gets back to San Antonio. And he immediately goes back to his instant message chats and all of his stuff because in my mind, I'm thinking when Lubbock police said they get down there and talk to his parents, they say, yeah, he's in his room. They go in there. He's on instant messenger chats again. And so in my head, I'm thinking he's looking for his next target.
That's right. He's doing what predators do. He's lining his prey up. He's trying to groom them to meet him, breaking down those walls where they're suspicious of him, befriending them. And I hate to use that term, but that's what he's trying to do so that whenever he comes to town, they're not going to hesitate to see him.
Right.
And that's exactly what he has done, not just once, but twice by now.
Yeah. And who knows if he was scouting multiple different areas because they don't really touch on that.
Yeah, they don't.
He could have been talking to girls from several different cities. So the police get him and talk to him. He, of course, says he doesn't know anything about it. He's going to claim he doesn't know, but they decide to take him back to Lubbock. And I'm sure that there had to be a process of which all of this came through, because I kind of breezed over it. But you're not just going to take Rodriguez and put him in the back of the car and drive him to Lubbock. There has to be some sort of formality with this. So there's got to be either a warrant issued for his arrest.
Yeah.
In my mind, I personally believe that if you at this point have the suitcase, the purchase, the latex gloves, and all of these things, I think you can probably get the PC, the probable cause, to get a warrant. So he's going to have to be arrested in San Antonio, so that's Bexar County, and then transported to Lubbock.
That's right.
But in the meantime, while all this is happening, they search the room that Rodriguez had rented, and they find the blood splatter and all the biological evidence in there. All this ties him back to Summer. Summer being in his room that he rented under a different name. And, I mean, same last name, different first name. But then this is just great. They're searching everywhere. They search in the hallways. They don't leave any stone unturned, as they say.
Right.
They go out by the elevator, and I think that's where it was, and they look inside the trash can because they caught a huge break when no one had cleaned this room.
That's right.
They had to find the body. They had to trace the suitcase back to Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Then look at his credit card data and find out where he was staying at. And when they got there, the room had been searched. That's a huge break.
That is huge. Because
the room had been cleaned.
Yeah, it hadn't been. And I mean, that is huge because a lot of times they're doing the downturn like as soon as they can. Immediately. It is downturn, right? That's the term?
Yeah.
Okay.
Turn down the room?
Turn down. Thank you. Not downturn.
Whatever. Stupid. No, just kidding. I'm definitely not the one to, we already talked about that. I mess words up all the time. It's okay.
It's no big deal.
But, I was just trying to be funny. So they get lucky there. Then somebody goes out, searches the trash can, and he's like, Holiday Inn bag. He's in a Holiday Inn. Well, that's not suspicious, but let's take a look inside. What's inside this Holiday Inn bag?
Walmart bag.
A Walmart bag. What's inside that Walmart bag? A receipt for the suitcase and a pair of latex gloves.
Yeah.
That guy's probably like, bingo!
No kidding.
Hey, fellas. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely got right on his phone or radio and was like, guess what?
Yeah.
I found another big old clue.
Yep. So the DNA evidence in the room is probably enough in my mind to, because that puts Summer in the room. Her blood's obviously in the room.
It's read under his name, albeit a false one.
But his credit card, it's on his credit card. And then they test the gloves, the latex gloves, and his DNA is on the inside as well as Summer's DNA, and then Summer's DNA is also on the outside. Right. And this is got to be one of those things where when one of the deals I watched, they said this was like open and shut. Yeah. We got the guy. Yeah. What possible scenario could we be talking about where this doesn't turn out to be the guy?
Exactly.
So they get Rodriguez and they tell him, to me, it was kind of, I was having a harder time figuring out which way all of this kind of went down. If it was the information with Summer that led them to the information with Joanna, and that's how they got him to confess. And what I mean by that is that they already knew about Joanna because they got a warrant for his electronics, which they start looking on. And boy, was that just a treasure trove of information.
Absolutely.
Because this guy, like most people, you don't realize Google has every single search anybody has ever done ever.
That's correct.
In a database. And so, but on his computer, it shows he's researching Summer. He's looking to see if there's any leads on the case. I mean, this is 2 days after. Right. 1 day after. He's wanting to know, did anybody find... He's probably trying to figure out, did anybody find this girl?
Yeah, what are the chances I'm getting away with this?
Yeah. And then they look in a search history, and they're like, oh, Joanna's name's also in here as well. Yeah. And they know that she is a missing person from Lubbock.
Yeah, and she was a juvenile.
Yeah, 16 years old.
Yeah, terrible.
And this is where they start thinking, what are the odds? What are the odds that this guy comes down and does this 2 times?
That's right. I mean, that's a pretty basic thing you can fall back on in the world of investigating is their MO, their modus operandi. And he's killing women, stuffing them in suitcases, throwing them in the trash. There's only one landfill in the area. I think that's correct.
Yeah, I would think so.
Mm-hmm. And so they don't hesitate. They're like, we're going to go look for that.
Yeah, we gotta follow up on this. So they find the instant messenger chats where he is talking to Joanna, like you said, befriending her, making her feel comfortable. And that's what's going to play into what we'll see later, where it's like it turns out to be a very fatal error for her because he talks to her, chats her up, gets her telephone number, and then says, well, I'll also be in town in a couple days, however the conversation played out, gets her phone number. He's like, hey, we should meet up. And so the cops know at this point, they're like, okay, we've got his digital footprint. He's been talking to her on the computer. He's been talking to her. He has her cell phone, or he has her phone. He's called her. And then they go back and they tie it again. They're like, well, what do you know? He was in town the same exact time that she went missing.
Yep.
And not only that, but he called her just after her parents went to bed, and then no one ever saw her again ever.
Yeah.
Sounds like they're heading down the right track on that too.
They definitely, they more than likely felt that way. They're like, he's gotta be good for it.
Yeah, because her dad was saying that he noticed that she didn't take her car. Like her keys were in the house. I mean, I know that even if I leave my house, most of the time I still at least have my keys with me to get back in the house.
Keys.
Yeah, phone wallet. Yeah, I do the pocket taps.
That's
make
right.
sure I have everything in there. And then, so she didn't have her car. She didn't have her car keys. She left her cell phone there, which today would be more like completely crazy because nobody leaves with other cell phones. But this is flip phones probably. But she didn't have her cell phone. She didn't take clothes. She didn't have her money.
Yeah.
She has nothing, and she literally vanished. And that's why I was kind of saying, I bet originally they probably considered her to be a runaway in the beginning.
I mean, that's a very common place that you go with teenagers that go missing, especially in the world of law enforcement. You hear about a teenager that's gone, and the parents are concerned, and of course we want them to be found. But your mind quickly goes to that. Did they just dip out to go run off and hang with friends, go hang out with somebody they consider a significant other, go to a movie, go to a party? It's the first thing you think of. And that's not unsensitive or insensitive, rather. That's a very common thought when you're dealing with juveniles that are suddenly gone. Do you also think that maybe something bad happened to them? Of course, that's your job as an investigator, but you don't jump to that right away because that's the worst possible scenario. And you're cognizant of it, but you're not jumping straight to that. You're like, oh, she's missing. Something terrible happened.
Right.
No parent wants to hear that. You're trying to keep them cool. You know what? Maybe she just went out to go meet with some friends. Maybe it was like, hey, we're going right now. Grab your shoes. Let's hit it.
Yeah.
And they take off. So that's not outside the world of possibility.
No. And as one day turns into 2, and 2 into a week into 2 weeks,
right,
the scenario obviously changes. And her parents didn't speak ill of the PD at Lubbock, but you would have to think in going through this scenario, they probably questioned them pretty hard about,
of course,
did you guys have any incidences? Well, did she what 16-year-old girls not had, or boy, I mean, I think
teenager,
teenagers, you're having issues, you're exploring kind of everything that's going on. You're getting a little bit more freedoms. You're getting all these different. So, I mean, there's definitely always conflicts, but I'm sure they started there.
Right.
And the only thing about this is that they don't talk a whole lot, but it goes nowhere because, I mean, she literally vanished.
Right.
And they have no idea what happened to her. And that kind of gives me a very creepy, like unsettling feeling because Think of how often stuff like this happens and we don't get so lucky.
Right. And, when I read about it, I was thinking, man, the only way you're going to find out is by the passing of time.
Yeah.
And of course, every day that ticked by after Joanna had gone missing must have been horrible.
Yeah.
And not just for the family. I mean, especially for the family. And I'm sorry for that. But even for the investigators, because they're like, oh man, every time the family calls, and good on them, you should. The answer to every question is going to be no unless you ask it.
Right.
So you got to stay on top and be like, hey, what about this? Have we heard anything? Are there any new updates? Are there any leads? That's important to ask. And it's a terrible thing as an investigator when you have to keep saying no. But your job is to follow the evidence, and there wasn't any left. This was obviously, and I hate to use the word organized, because this implies that this monster knew what he was doing, but to a degree he did. Mm-hmm. He got her to come meet him, or she left and walked down the street where he was waiting.
Yeah,
that's my theory.
Yeah, I think that's pretty popular.
Because like we were saying, she didn't take anything.
Yeah, she leaves her house, walks out the front door, hops out her window, whatever that scenario is, goes and meets up with him, gets in his car, and their intentions were obviously different, unless his overall intention was to murder her. But I don't know if that was his intention when he went into there, but she obviously thought something different than him.
Yeah. Well, what we do know now about him is that he is somebody who gets off on that type of thing, because not only did he commit these two crimes, but it also came out later that he had been alleged to have committed sexual assaults on past girlfriends and other women.
Yeah.
So it's not like he decided to do this all of a sudden. I think there was a build up to this.
Yeah, for sure.
And, anybody with half a working brain knows there's only so many times you're going to get away with that. So maybe he started thinking, I got to go ahead and get rid of them so that this doesn't keep happening. It's a matter of time until this comes out. If he gets rid of the victim, there's no crime to report.
Right. And I hate to put a break in this, but those locusts are really going hard out there.
They are, yeah.
They are so loud.
Yeah.
Anyways, he gets, and this is the thing. Lubbock PD also gets a break whenever they go back and figure out that the landfill has a grid system in place. And so they're going to kind of throw the old Hail Mary and see if they can get lucky enough to go back and basically dig through hundreds of thousands of pounds of trash.
Yeah.
To see if they can find Joanna's body.
I was wondering how many people were involved in that. Did you? I didn't see.
Hundreds.
Yeah, hundreds. Had to have been.
Yeah.
I mean.
No, they said, several hundred people showed up. It was like a 12-week ordeal.
Yeah.
And you have to imagine, I don't know if anybody's ever been out to a landfill before, but goodness.
Yes, it's mountains high and deep.
Of just.
Because they make these big old cuts in the earth, and they just push this refuse in and then run over and then go over it with heavy equipment to smush it down and pack it in as much as they can, pound for pound, inch for inch, and then cover it with dirt, do it again.
Do it all over again. Yeah.
And we're just, you wouldn't think that something goes into, like the grid system you mentioned, you wouldn't think that there's a science to that, but there is. And it may be for this exact purpose, so that they're like, hey, this person went missing around this time. We need to be able to search for it. And you keep using the word lucky. That is lucky.
Yeah, so lucky.
They took that shot. They're like, you know what? We're going to get the people together. We're going to dig into all this trash that's been sitting out in the open air and heat, and they eventually find it. And imagine the relief.
Yeah.
They were like, holy crap, this is it. Like, this is the dude. Yeah. We know for sure now.
You have hundreds of people alongside with detectives out there just digging through piles of trash, and it's by any means, it's not safe.
No.
It's to do that. And I think there was even mention of them right before they found Joanna's body of pulling the plug on the whole operation, because they were concerned for the safety of the volunteers as well as the detectives and staff of Lubbock PD, the city workers, and
that's
everybody.
Very important that we recognize that, guys. These people showed up to look for this on their free time and dug through thousands and tons of rotting trash in various degrees of decomposition to try to find this girl. They didn't get paid a cent for it. They did it all on their own volition, and that is remarkable. We've talked about it before. Those are good people doing good things.
Absolutely.
That's what found Joanna.
Yeah.
And that is something that we should all be proud of that happened.
Yeah, that gave her parents closure, and that gave her parents, that also put her parents in a situation where they could lay Joanna to rest properly, and now they have that, for the rest of their life.
Exactly. That is so important. And so, I just want to say a shout out to anybody that was involved in that. Yeah, that's priceless. They did. Your efforts ended up in a priceless, helping to that family.
Well, 100%. They get back, and it's unfortunate because they weren't able to get any DNA evidence from Joanna's suitcase that she was in. She was also in a suitcase, and this is understandable to me because, like we said, she's been out in this landfill for 18 months. There's been, there's a lot of stuff that's been going on, and then the state of her decomposition is probably just accelerated all the way to the point where I don't know what it looked like when they opened it up in there, but I'm assuming it's just not going to be good.
Yeah, it's one of those things where thank you to the men and women responsible for investigating that, but I would not have wanted to do it.
No, I would not have been the one that had to look in there and see if that was
rough.
The situation. That would be terrible. But so after this, they really go hard at Rodriguez and tell him, listen, man, dude, you're done.
Yeah, I like the way you talked about it where you said it's important not to show all your cards, but you also got to let him know that you're not messing around, that you're playing hardball. You're like, look, you can say whatever you want right now, but here's all our corroborating evidence that says you're the dude, man. So just spit it out.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said. This can be used in a good way, which we've seen before, and this can be used in a bad way.
That's right.
And when they tell Rodriguez, listen, we've got all this evidence, and you know what the next thing is going to be that happens to you? You're going to be headed to death row.
That's right.
We're going to put you to death for this because not only did you kill a 16-year-old girl, you sick F.
Yes.
You killed a woman who was 2.5 months pregnant that was a single mother of 4 children.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think all this is going to play out? It doesn't play in your favor.
No.
We've got evidence that shows that you are in contact with both of these women. We've got Summer's DNA evidence in your room, and we know that you were talking to Joanna up until the point that she vanished, and you were the last person that called her phone her bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go to death row. And he's like, well, and they're like, listen, we can take that off the table. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. These are capital crimes.
Yeah.
What do you say? And he's like, yeah. All right, let's talk about it.
Yep.
And that's what I'm saying. If he would have had to go to trial, they would have had more tricks in the bag.
Oh, yeah.
They gave him what they had to give him to get this confession out. So they didn't show their full hand, but they showed him.
That's right.
They weren't playing around.
They put enough on there for him to look at his mortality and weigh that against what they already knew. And he's like, oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I rather like my life, so I don't want to die for this. But I also don't want to say that I did it, but I don't want to die for it either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he folds, which is great. I mean, great job on their part. And he goes ahead and has a confession.
Yep. And they get the confession from him, and you can find video. I didn't find any of him actually talking specifically about the murders, but him being in the interrogation room or the interview room, as it might be known now. But he, talking to the detectives about everything that's going on, and he's got the same expression on his face the whole time. Whether you look at interviews when he's first arrested, while he's going to court, after he's put on death row, and it is a face of no emotion, does not care.
And I would go so far to say that he didn't care.
Not at all.
He doesn't care. This is a guy that clearly doesn't value women except as an object to service him.
Yep.
And that's why it meant nothing to him. And later on, when we talk about his execution, that becomes even more apparent because he never addresses it. And I would say that he doesn't want to.
No.
He wants to keep as much distance and barriers between him and what he's done because he doesn't think he's done, in his mind, he probably doesn't think he's done anything wrong.
No, he's doing the Lord's work.
That's right. And he just got caught.
Yeah, golly, this guy makes me so, and that's what I'm saying. Like when I'm talking about this guy, my mind stays going in just so many different directions because
Absolutely.
he makes me angry.
Yeah. I mean, this dude was clearly demented. There was a history of this. And it is very unfortunate. There's nobody to blame either. I want to be super clear about that. It is unfortunate that he did have a history of this and it went nowhere, but there's nobody to blame but him.
Right.
He chose to do these things. He did have a history of it, and it ended with the murder of 2 people or 3, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And that's just the kind of person that he was. Nothing was going to stop him. It was always going to get to that point.
Yeah, Joanna was a 16-year-old girl. She's not at fault for what happened to her.
Certainly not.
Summer, I don't care what her profession is. I don't care if she's a sex worker.
Mm-hmm.
This was not her fault.
No, absolutely not.
Showing up to a room that she thinks she's going to have a transaction with someone, and she gets beat to death. That's not her fault. It doesn't matter what your profession is. It doesn't matter what your opinion is on this. I know it can go 100 different ways.
Yeah, we like to look at the fringes of society. And I know this is something that gets harped about a lot in podcasting or talking about it in any capacity. But it is an occupation that thousands and thousands of people do. And whenever somebody disregards that person because of their occupation, to me, it sounds stupid. Nobody's asking to get murdered. That's like an electrician that gets electrocuted and dies, and they're like, well, that's what happens when you're an electrician.
I mean,
nobody's saying that because that's messed up.
Yeah, you knew it could be a possibility, right?
Sure,
so
yeah.
I don't even feel bad. No, you can't do that. And that's, I want to get into, so Summer specifically, one of the things that I talked about this earlier, I want to go ahead and tie this in. I talked about how I was really kind of confused about them saying that her cause of death was asphyxiation, even though she obviously had a lot of trauma from where Rodriguez beat her.
A savage beating, yeah.
Yeah, is all they could. I mean, from what they said in the police report, it was very violent beating, as a lot of these cases I think we've done. It's always been pretty violent, but just kind of driving that point home. But they said that she died from asphyxiation, and their claim is that she was still alive when she was put into this suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that opens up a whole lot of possibilities about how this could have gone down. And I think we should, I'd like to run over some of those if you...
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So the first thing that we're going to bring up is that it's believed that the beating occurred before he went to Walmart.
Correct.
To purchase the latex gloves and the suitcase. And so he was gone for about 45 minutes. Is that my understanding?
I would guess somewhere in the neighborhood.
Because he also got fuel afterwards. Mm-hmm. And so that would imply that she was left in the hotel room.
Yes.
That whole time. And from what I've read, there is no evidence of ligature or any type of binding. And so if that is the implication, then she was just left there in a state of unconsciousness.
Yeah. What are we missing here? Like, what is did she get beat so bad that Rodriguez thought she was dead and she wasn't, or, you know? Yeah.
And I read, I think it was in a Texas Tribune article from back then, that he choked her and beat her. And so, immediately, the way that my brain works, I spent some time in the Army, and you get trained on, at least in any type of training in the military, a basic understanding of ground fighting tactics.
Right.
You learn to defend yourself to a certain degree, and that advances with your skill and your choice of military occupational specialty. But he would at least know the basics of it, how to choke somebody out. And that's a very rapid way to disable somebody, especially if this is a guy who got off on that type of violence on women.
Mm-hmm.
So they start to scuffle. He quickly overpowers her into a choke, chokes her out, and then savagely beats her and thinks maybe she's dead. Now I got to get rid of her remains. So he goes to the store. But it's possible that she wasn't dead from the evidence that we have, and that he beat her savagely into unconsciousness. And we know that if you are unconscious to a certain degree, you could have such shallow breathing that you may not appear alive to anybody. And maybe he thought, okay, she's gone. I'm going to go ahead.
Breathing is so labored that he's like,
not labored, just shallow.
Okay.
From her state of unconsciousness that he can't detect that she's breathing. And so he's like, oh, she's dead. Now I'm going to move on to phase 2 and go get the way to dispose of her. And so when he comes back and she's still there, unfortunately, or there's the possibility that he did bind her and she just never struggled against it, and so it left no marks. Now, we don't know this. Again, this is all theory and speculation, but we're just trying to figure out how that much time elapsed and she never tried to get away.
Yeah, because the police believe that Summer went up to Rodriguez's room for the casual sexual encounter with payment.
Yeah.
And after it was, or this is a working theory, I guess.
Yeah.
After the encounter, Summer asked about her money, possibly, and they started arguing about something.
Yeah.
Maybe it was payment in general. Maybe it was the price. And Rodriguez snapped and beat her, then left, got the suitcase, got gas, came back. And so that's where in my mind I'm thinking, well, could it be something else?
Mm-hmm.
Could maybe they have the time wrong that Summer showed up? Because time is money.
That's it.
It doesn't matter what you're doing. Time is money. So I think it would be, I don't think that you can say that Summer showed up, sat in the room.
Yeah.
Rodriguez goes and says, hey, I got to go run an errand real quick.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. I got to go get some condoms.
Yeah.
Or, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Anything.
And she sits in the room and waits for him to go get the suitcase, which will be her final resting place until they find her, of course, and comes back. And then he's like, hey, all right, let's get to it.
Yeah.
And then he beats her and sexually assaults her, because I did find in the research that his DNA evidence was found in a rape kit.
Mm-hmm.
And so does the sexual encounter come before or after?
Another great question. And I wish I had the answer to that, because maybe that was all part of his twisted fantasy, is that's the way he liked to do it. We know he liked to abuse women.
Yeah.
We know that. And
how many people have we, we're 18 episodes in. How many people that have we talked about who have done similar things like this without even trying to?
Exactly. And there's also the one that I thought of, that they did get the time wrong, that she arrived and he went and did this before. Like, he bought the latex gloves and the suitcase before she even got there, knowing full well what his plan was.
Yeah, he got the murder starter kit and then came back because it already worked once before.
Right.
So he thought, okay, I'm going to go for 2, assuming that he only admitted to what he was told he did.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't bring anybody else in.
That's right.
He obviously, he could have said, well, there's 5 more bodies out there.
Yep.
And I bet that they cross-referenced his information with every single missing person that was a female around this time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the police did not do that, but I'm just saying that he could have in other areas
for sure
been doing the same thing.
Oh yeah.
And so for me, I get to the point where I'm like, okay, how could she have been alive unless it was like you're saying? She was beaten so badly that if he did tie her up, she did not struggle. So therefore there was no ligature marks, and he just happened to luck out and she did not come to. She stayed unconscious this whole time. And then when he came back, he went ahead and, assuming that she was dead, stuffed her in the bag. And because, are we, in my head, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this woman's 2.5 months pregnant. She just got beat almost to death. She's stuffed in a suitcase. Is she still alive and knows what's going on as she's being wheeled through the lobby out to this guy's truck?
God, I hope not. I hope not. That's so terrible to think about. That's one of those
things that, when I say things that keep me up at night, where I'm laying in bed thinking about certain different things of this case, where I'm like, geez, I hope she at least didn't know she was in a suitcase being wheeled through the hotel
and tossed into a dumpster
and then chunked into a dumpster.
Yeah, it's terrible. And it's just another piece of information we know about this Rodriguez guy, and that he was a total monster and a creep.
Yeah. And I think that's how, when I was thinking about Joanna's situation, I know we've already talked about this, but that's where in my mind I'm thinking that his conversation with a 16-year-old was probably more casual and light.
Yeah.
I don't I did not find anything in my research that said that she was heading out to his truck knowing that there was going to be some sort of sexual encounter with them.
Yeah, nothing. I never found anything like that.
So
either.
she could have just thought in her mind that she's 16 years old. She's going out to meet this guy. He's got his own, his car. He's an older guy. Who knows what he told her?
Exactly.
But, he could have been saying...
Yeah, we're not privy to that information, but I wish we were.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, he's 24, I think. Mm-hmm. And so he could have told her that he's 21. 20, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a Marine. He's got a lot of things going for him that are at least somewhat...
attractive.
Yeah, and she thinks, hey, I'll go talk to this guy. Mm-hmm. Jumps in his truck, and he's like, all right, let's do the thing. And she's like, what thing? And he's like, you know what I'm here for.
Yeah.
She says no. He beats the hell out of her. Mm-hmm. And my guess is that one of the things I was thinking of is, did he have his own suitcase with him? So like, my thought was, okay, if this was the first time he did this, maybe he's got his own suitcase in his truck.
Yeah.
After he commits this violent act, let's assume that it's his first one.
Let's do that.
He hasn't thought all the way through to the point where he's at. He beats her up. She's dead. He looks in the back of his truck and he's like, oh man, let me see if she'll fit in here. I mean, is all this happening just on the side of the road or in an alley?
Yeah, no.
That's
God.
just, It
makes me wonder, did they go back to a hotel room? And this was also during a time that he was in Lubbock for training, correct?
Correct.
So yeah, he probably had a room.
Yeah. And so whatever happens. He stuffs her in maybe his own suitcase, throws her in the dumpster, and then he realizes that he's got a paper sack it or plastic sack special with his clothes in there all the way back to San Antonio. And he's like, next time I'll just buy a suitcase.
Yeah. I mean, that's how.
Why use my own?
That's how it becomes an MO. Yeah. That's how he's like, well, it worked last time. It
worked, and then he repeated it again.
That's right.
So, I mean, it could be safe to say that he bought the suitcase and left her in his truck, and and we just don't know that. But my thought was, I wonder if in the beginning, if all this is happening in real time and he's not ready for this situation, how did Ricindo Rodriguez come to be known as the Suitcase Killer?
Right.
What was the thought in his mind?
Right.
That said, I'm going to stuff him in a suitcase. And then it worked. Yep. 18 months later, nobody knows a thing. There's not a shred of evidence anywhere. Right. And he thinks to himself, and this is where I think is very callous on his part, he thinks to himself, it'll work again.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And I'm so glad that he got caught.
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah. And he definitely thought, well, it worked last time. This is what I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that he was thinking he was getting away with it. And so it was just another day to him. And then, he was going to assault this woman, and then stuff her in a suitcase and toss her out with the garbage, because that's what I did last time, and I'm good to go about it.
And I also wonder, did anybody see this man walking into the hotel at 3:46, 3:50 in the morning with a brand new suitcase, assuming he might be carrying it in his hand and not rolling it along, and then not long after that, he's got a suitcase that is packed to the brim? And I would have to assume, I don't know the weight of Summer, but over 100 pounds.
Yeah, and we can at least say that.
We can at least say that without knowing exactly what she weighed. 100 pounds, 150 pounds, crammed into a suitcase, and then 15 minutes later, he's walking out with the suitcase, rolling it across the ground, and everybody's just like, hey, man, we'll see you later. Hey, don't forget,
check out.
Yeah. Continental breakfast starts in 2 hours.
That's right.
Checkout's at 10.
That's right. Yeah, and unless you're aware of the things going on around you to agree where you'd make note of that, nobody ever would in a hotel.
No, and I'm not putting any blame on them.
Of course
I'm just thinking like, boy, that's kind of weird. That would be weird to me.
Exactly.
If I was watching somebody, I'm like, that guy just walked into that suitcase 2 seconds ago.
If you've cultivated that type of observation skill set, you would find that weird. But to the average person, especially a night clerk, I'm not saying anything bad about him, but I mean, it's late. Yeah. They got stuff to do.
Yeah.
They probably got a show on. They're doing administrative work. Some guy going in and out. That's not that uncommon in a hotel.
No, especially if that is a hotel that is used primarily for, let's say that the company that he was out of, if that's the correct usage there, always use that hotel.
Sure.
So if they know that specific hotels make deals with certain businesses,
right,
and you know, so
the government,
yeah. So there's no way. I kind of thought in my head when I was thinking, I was like, man, that'd be weird if I saw somebody walking into a hotel and then 15 minutes later he's just dragging the suitcase out that weighs over 100 pounds to get ready and just chunk it in a dumpster somewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, do you want to talk about anything else with that before we move on to the trial? And all
No. He takes the plea deal.
Yep.
He has the confession, and then I was more than surprised to find out that he went back on that. He's
what
like,
an idiot.
Hold up. You know what? I just got a flash of inspiration. I think I can get away with this.
Yeah. He's like, I think I can walk on this one.
Yeah.
I've got an idea.
So even
self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
I was the victim. Ladies and gentlemen, I was the victim. Not these women who are packed in suitcases and thrown in dumpsters.
Yes.
To be run over by equipment at a landfill repeatedly.
Buried in the earth with refuse.
Golly,
this guy literally, full-grown man, Marine reservist, was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say that this was in self-defense. These women were going to hurt me.
They were going to hurt me.
And I was so scared that I killed them and disposed of their remains instead of telling anybody about it.
Calling the police.
Calling the police, yeah. That definitely probably didn't go over well, and for what we know now, it sure didn't.
Yeah, I just had to beat somebody Dominic Toretto style until they were unconscious, and also I had to sexually assault them too. I mean, not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I also had to do that. But then I got so scared that I was going to get in trouble that I had to put their bodies in a suitcase and dispose of them like garbage.
Yep.
And when I saw that, because I couldn't remember how he ended up on death row, but I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
When I read that they gave him a plea deal, he admitted to everything that he did, and then he took he said, not guilty.
I mean,
and they're like, I bet everybody was I bet they had a cupcake party that day.
Yeah.
Where they just brought cupcakes up to the office. They're like, hey, we're going for the death penalty on this one. This dude just pulled his plea deal.
He literally pulled the carpet out from under his own feet. This was one of those trials in my head when I'm thinking about it, where his defense team's just sitting in their chair moping. Yeah. They're just like, this guy, I mean, we're committed because it's part of the deal. You know, we're his defense team, but he's going to go back on that and be like, nah, this is self-defense. They had to be like, ugh.
They're like, okay, let's work the self-defense angle. Let's say that he's probably crazy, because you mentioned that, and I read it, that he had some abuse as a child.
Yeah. An alcoholic, abusive father.
And
so yeah, they're going to bring out all the stops to try to victimize him.
Yeah. But, and that's their job. I know it sucks, and people are going to be like, how could you defend trash like this? It's their job.
It's their job, and don't worry, nobody knows that it's shady as much as they do.
Yeah, and I assume too, like you got the table of lawyers sitting there, and they're all just like kicked back in their chairs with their hands
folded over their stomachs.
Like, would you like to cross-examine? And they're like, nah.
Nope.
Nah, that guy sounds like, that detective sounds like he's got everything pretty squared away, so... no. Would you like to call any witnesses? Nah, I don't think so. We'd like to get his mom on the stand. I actually don't know that. Where somebody can talk about how awesome of a guy he is.
In that article I read, they did say that his family would go on to talk about him as, you know, a successful Texas Tech alumni who was good enough to maybe even be president one day.
Boy.
And obviously...
big dreams happening over there.
There sure was. And... you know, nobody wants to think that their family member is capable of such things. And so a good defense, thinking you're doing the right thing, you know, this is a good person. They would never do that.
Yeah, that's actually a good... I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to bring this up in another episode and I forgot. But as law enforcement officers, and I'm sure attorneys and everything, when something terrible happens, the first thing that someone says is, so-and-so would never do something like that.
Denial.
That is the first thing that everybody says. And listen, that's even happened to me before, where somebody said something about someone I knew, and I was like, not a chance.
Yep.
He would never do something like that. And then I was like, Oh, unless he did.
Unless he did.
And in this situation, you don't want to think about your son as a rapist and a murderer.
No,
that's
of course
fair.
not.
That's fair.
You want to keep that as far away from your version of reality with that person as you can.
Yeah, you're
and there's
thinking
nothing
about
wrong
him.
with that. I'm not saying anything about his family. They're just doing what they thought was right. They had no idea this guy was a monster and a creep, or maybe they did.
Yeah,
because he had a history of these things that came out during the trial, and they were just like, these were all misunderstandings. I had no idea that it was that bad.
Yeah. Like they're saying, hey, did you know your son's a rapist and a murderer? And all they can think about is the fact that when he was, they remember when he was 3 years old, they took him trick-or-treating in his Power Rangers costume. Like you have those memories of, because he wasn't always this man.
Right.
Unless you get into the fact that you are born the person, which I don't want to go down that road. But it's one of those things where, they're thinking about him in this innocent way.
Mm-hmm.
A man of which he is no longer.
Right.
He is not this person that they're thinking of anymore.
Yeah, so he goes ahead and throws in the not guilty plea, and he goes to trial, and he does not make it. They're like, nah, you did this, and you're getting the death penalty.
Yeah, they come back, find him guilty, he gets the death penalty, and that's where I bet he's probably just thinking to himself that he's got to get his appeals process rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't want to die. I think you were spot on when he made that deal with the DA's office. It was self-preservation.
That's right.
He does not want to even get, and what the way and the manner in which he's going to die, depending on how you look at lethal injection. I know there's a lot of things one way or the other on that, but any way you look at it, he's not getting anything close to what he dealt.
No, absolutely not.
But he's still thinking to himself, I have to be able to live on.
Yeah.
And
it's when you're weighing anything against your mortality, it's instant. Obviously, we don't want to die. You want to continue to live, even if it's the inside of a jail cell in the prison system.
Yeah. But
nobody inherently wants to die. At least a healthy person doesn't think that way.
Yeah, there's a good line by the Turnpike Troubadours. They have a song that says, "We all want to be Hank Williams. We just don't want to have to die."
That's right.
And when you're talking about trying to kind of emulate someone's lifestyle, or you're like we were saying, self-preservation. Anyways, I love the Turnpike Troubadours. So.
Yeah, they're a great band.
Anyways, so when he goes to prison, I didn't find a whole lot in way of his appeals process, but I'm assuming because it only took 13 years.
It didn't work
open
out.
the book and close the book, that things moved pretty quickly. It was pretty swift justice, and things did not work out for him very well in those appeals process. But
no.
What are you going to say? I know that I mentioned this in part one, where I said that there was an incident where he was talking about the coroner's office for Lubbock, and saying that there was some nefarious actions that were happening over there, and I wanted to look more into that. And then when I was talking to you about it, we pretty much figured out that he was just making up.
Yeah.
He was trying to make it out like they were.
Right. He's trying to cast
doing
doubt.
Something wrong.
Right. And so his beef with the coroners and the coroner's office and the medical examiner was he was claiming that they had been involved in thousands of wrongful convictions, and not an ounce of proof went into this. This was just a claim to cast doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's swinging at the fences now. He's throwing everything he can at the wall to see what sticks.
That's it. Say. Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately for him, nothing stuck. Nothing stick. Mm-mm. It all just is like throwing spaghetti at the wall. I don't know. I guess it all hit the ground. But and when he he's transferred to Huntsville to be executed. And then as I'm reading through some of this information, it was a KCBD news story, and they start talking about how he never admits to his crimes, but he never apologizes to anybody.
Yeah.
Because he's already admitted to his crimes once before, but for some odd reason, all of a sudden he's not done any of these things.
Yep.
He's a victim, and then this has got to be frustrating and infuriating to the victims' families who are both present at the execution, which I would be too. And then he starts saying that it's people need to write those people on death row and saying things like, it is every person's biblical duty to visit those in prison. Now, I do believe that prison ministry is a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to see some of that happen when I worked in the jail, when I was in law enforcement. Great things can happen in situations like that.
Yeah.
I don't think that he is the person I would take much advice for or much advice from. That is good, but it's not necessarily your biblical duty unless he was planning on citing something, like maybe giving me a reference point I could go back and look up. But
I'm going to say no.
He had some time to find it.
He did.
But, probably had a lot of time on his hands, but he did not do that. And then he wanted to bring up the civil lawsuits against Lubbock County Medical, because we talked about that, and citing that his appeals were denied based off of nefarious acts of other people, which, like we said, he's swinging at the fences. He wanted the FBI to investigate the Lubbock County District Attorney's Office, and he said that the state may have my body but not my soul. It's touching. Very touching.
I mean, it's accurate, just in detail only.
Yeah.
I mean, with
that,
the way I'm feeling,
the state may have my body but not my soul.
That's true, because if things worked out that they're supposed to be biblically, then his soul would be in hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He would be taking he'd be on the express route.
Yeah, for sure,
hell.
to the lake of fire.
Yeah, he was on the express route through the death penalty process. Mm-hmm. He got the needle, and then that also would continue if he would be on the express route.
If we're getting biblical.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He also goes on to say that he wanted people to boycott Texas businesses in an effort to pressure the state into abolishing the death penalty. That did not go anywhere either.
And, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. This is a state that is very pro death penalty. And I know that you can talk about certain situations where this situation right here, this is one of those things where we get to where you're either against the death penalty or you're for it. If we're looking at a case like Johnny Frank Garrett, what a disaster.
For sure.
And I don't know. Let me ask you this question. This is totally random, but this was in the Johnny Frank Garrett case. Do you think that in order for the death penalty to remain as it is, do you think it is okay for one innocent person to die as long as 99 guilty people are executed? So would you trade one person's life for the 99?
Man, that is a tough question in the morality department.
Yeah.
And of course, people are going to say no.
Yeah.
You don't want to kill a good person.
My answer is no.
Of course
you can't.
Not. But this isn't. Has that happened? And sadly, will it happen again? God, I hope not. But it does happen, and it has happened, and that's very unfortunate.
Yeah. But then you look at this, and you're like, nah, let's get this done.
This guy's a murderer, and of course, when you're talking about morality, you can even take, like the whole Batman stance, where you don't kill people because if you kill a murderer, one still remains, and that's you.
Yeah.
But that's not the way that the law sees it. A jury has decided that. It's a civil responsibility that was decided by multiple people, not just one person.
Yeah.
And that's the cost of having a functional justice system.
Yeah.
That's required. Otherwise, our justice system and our criminal justice system is so overburdened.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this is a reason to start acing people.
No.
Of course not.
No.
I'm just saying that if it's a capital crime and you have sufficient evidence within a shadow of a doubt to convict them of the crimes, I don't see the issue, provided that the appropriate amount of culpability and due diligence was done on behalf of the investigators and the lawyers that bring it to trial to get that verdict.
Right.
If that's all clean and good, I don't see the issue. So that's a civil responsibility that we have to punish capital criminals.
Yeah.
If that's a term. If it's not, I apologize.
But and that's where that's where I get on the fence, and I didn't want to draw this out, but when you look at something like Johnny Frank Garrett's case, where the district attorney's office seemed to have hid evidence and obviously went for the wrong guy, and the public was made to believe that this was the man, and something horrible happened to him. Whereas Rodriguez, you're like, no, this is the guy.
Yeah.
I don't see anything that would point me the other direction, but I that's a question that maybe we could direct towards the listener. You know, are you pro death penalty, or are you against it?
Absolutely.
And what's your reason other than, I think we talked about the kind of both sides of that, the best reasons for both, because if you don't protect human life to some capacity then what is it worth? I know that that's one of the questions that I hear people talk. Okay, if there's no death penalty, then doesn't that devalue human life?
Great argument.
So, it's both sides, and that's why I say we'll talk about both sides. We're not going to jump on one side or the other, but there's definitely a lot of different ways you can look at that.
Yeah, but any feedback that any listener would like to give us on the matter, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Tell me how you feel about all that.
Yeah, 100%. So he's executed, he's gone. And this is one of those cases where even after, I don't know, like I said, I'm still, we're a little over an hour in right now, and there's still so many things that are kind of in my head where I'm like, this is nuts. Mm-hmm. I don't like this. I don't like anything about it.
There's nothing to like. This was a guy that had
he's so smug, just.
Yeah, he didn't think he did anything wrong, and he would keep it, and even to the end, he kept as much distance between himself and the truth of the matter, because more than likely in his mind, he didn't see a problem with it.
He did nothing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I am not a bad person. I can't be guilty of this. Me until the very end.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. So I think we can, I don't know, are you good?
I'm good, man. Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to do something. We had, like I said, a couple of people that gave us reviews on Apple podcasts.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to read a couple of those off for the listeners and try to convince you to please do the same thing. Yeah. Because as these reviews and ratings come in, our podcast download numbers go up.
Yes.
Because it like I said, it's all about that algorithm. And so this right now, we're in the phase where all of this stuff we're doing right now is free. There's no ads. There's no, we have nothing set up that could ever even cost you money right now.
That's right.
Not saying that maybe later on that's not a direction we might go, but I definitely don't want to go heavy on ads. I hate listening to stuff like that. So let's keep it legit, people. If we can go this route, then we can definitely do that. But that review that I read earlier from Hair091, that led us to this case. Right after that, we had, and I'll go back and read all of them at another time, but right after that, we had one from Drive Through Grab Game. He says, or she says, this has got to be one of the best true crime podcasts I've listened to in a long time. I love the addition of the debrief episodes that Justin has with Mike. Shout out to Mike.
Thank you.
Using both their knowledge and expertise on analyzing crimes and investigations, definitely recommend.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for those kind words, Drive Through Grab Game. Yeah. That's high praise. Thank you.
Yeah. Black Razor T-Rat. This person says, providing detail from the skilled viewpoints of law enforcement as well as solid, in-depth, fact-driven information allows each episode to be entertaining, very informative, and dare I say, a little cinematic. The debrief is equally excellent, providing a more relaxed and less dark approach to some of the crime. The dialogue of multiple hosts allows episodes to stay fresh in their approach to subject matter.
Also a good one.
So thank you very much. We got a few more, but I'll read them later. But we appreciate that. We really do.
Very much.
Saying this, we're kind of, like I said, we work. Well, I know I keep beating this to death. We work long hours, but we love podcasting.
I do.
We love sitting down and doing this every week. It's really cool.
We were already been doing this for so long, like we've talked about before. The only difference is now we're recording it.
Yeah, now we got microphones in front of our face.
We want to share that thing. We have these thoughts. We have experiences. We have the knowledge to make these things make sense to people that may not have all of these viewpoints. And if that's something that we can give you, that's literally what we're here for. So get on there. Give us a 5-star review. give us some feedback.
Yeah.
Give us some case suggestions, because I don't want to stop doing this. So let's keep that list a-growing.
Yeah, and if you have, the more interaction, we've actually started getting interaction between listeners and ourselves. And the more interaction that we have, the more questions we can answer. The more episodes we can bring you. The more, I mean, all of that kind of goes together, where if someone's like, hold on, you guys were talking about this, and maybe you didn't go into it as far as I'd like, and you skipped onto it, because we're two people literally just freestyling this.
That's right.
And we want it to be like that because it's more authentic, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
There's no script. We have an overview, and we use that to talk about the cases, but we want it to just flow naturally. So if we go over something that, or if we went over something that you thought maybe needed a little deeper look and you have a question, shout out to us.
Do it.
And don't worry, at the end of this episode, I'll let you know how you can do that. Because I always do.
That's what's up.
So, all right, well, we're going to go ahead and leave it there for this week. We thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening. I can't tell you how much it means to us. We really appreciate everybody that's going on and subscribing to the show and listening to it. It means so much to us. If you need to find us on any of the social medias, we are on Facebook at The Murder Project. If you need to search for us, go ahead and type in facebook.com/podcasttmp. If you're looking for us on the old Instagrams, we are at The Murder Project. And if you are searching for us on the Twitters, we are at The Murder Pod. Also, we'd like to remind everybody, once again, if you could, go on to whatever platform you're listening on, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the show, hit that 5 stars, and leave us a review if you don't mind. We really appreciate all the ones we've got, and we'll continue to read those off as we get them. Also, if you have a longer form question that you need to reach out to us over email by, we've got an email. Someone please use it. No one's done that at all yet.
Please use it.
It is contact@themurderproject.com. And as always, either Mike will reach out to you, I will reach out to you, or both of us. We like to stay in touch with you guys as much as we can. This is in the beginning, so really we can get back in touch with everybody.
Let's do it.
So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I can't wait to talk to you guys again. But before we go, please remember,
head up, eyes up,
and stay alive.